Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this live stream Q&A for the film Captain Volkonogov Escaped. It's playing in our International Feature Film Competition at this year's 57th Chicago International Film Festival. First, I'd like to thank the Jacqueline and John Buxbaum Family Foundation for the support of our competition. And I would like to extend a very, very warm welcome to co-directors and co-writers, Natasha Merkulova. Welcome, Natasha. And also Alexei Chupov. Welcome, Alexei. Thank you for joining us. We're going to have Andre here with us, who's going to be interpreting. So thank you, Andre, as well. So from what I understand, you guys are calling in from set from your next film in Russia. So thank you for taking the time out. I know it's a busy time for you. I would like to just first congratulate you on the film. And I wanted to begin the conversation by maybe talking about the setting of the film. So, you know, in many ways, it feels like a dystopian past, but could also be a dystopian future. But very specifically, the setting is 1938. And I was wondering if you could talk about specifically locating it in the year of 1938.
Да, вопрос, связанный с тем, с местом действия и с временем действия фильма, потому что кажется, что это одновременно антиутопия, которая происходит в прошлом, и в том числе есть еще футуристические определенные операции в антиутопии, и тем не менее задан определенное время, это 1938 год, как Мими спрашивает, и вот вопрос связан с тем, про время и про место непосредственно, когда происходит действие фильма.
Ну, понятно, что это антиутопия, что это не историческое кино. Мы между собой называем это ретроутопия.
Yeah, it's a historical movie, but at the same time, the way we call it between us is retro-utopia.
This is not a historical movie. Not.
И мы говорим о том, что все персонажи выдуманы, обстоятельства выдуманы, однако мы берем совершенно конкретный исторический период, да, 1938 год, это самый разгар репрессий, и на этом фоне рассказываем историю одного человека.
Были немножко небольшие помехи со связью, насколько я...
It's a retro-utopia where we take as a background the historical events of our past that happened in the late 30s. The so-called Big Terror period in the history of USSR. And we concentrate mostly on the life of the protagonist, on the life of a human, of one man.
И, конечно, понятно, что не было там граффити в 1938 году. Этот мир мы придумали и создали, но эти художники, граффити которых, изображения, которых мы использовали, картины, конечно, были, и они были неотъемлемой частью этого исторического периода и его визуализировали.
For example, you can see in our movie, you can see graffiti on the walls. Graffiti did not exist, of course, in 1938, but the painters on which works this graffiti is based, they all worked in 20s and 30s in the USSR. These were the famous Russian constructivists. And so we just we imagined that how would graffiti look in 1938 if it would exist.
На стенах домов в нашем киномире вы увидите там Водкина, Филонова и Малевича. Это очень важные художники в русском авангардизме и очень важные художники, ну, наверное, я не знаю, в жизни каждого русского.
For example, you can see the works in our graffiti. You can see the works of Petrov, Vodkin, Malevich, Filonov, and these are very important figures in Russian avant-garde, and for all people who love Russian art of the 20th century.
Филонов это наш использовал там иконопись и фольклорную корневую русскую живопись.
For example, Filonov was using the art of iconopis. How would you say that?
Like Russian icons, Russian religious art, yes.
Yes, Russian religious art and folklore elements, so the roots of the Russian art.
Да, а Малевич, например, используя русские мотивы, писал в японской вообще технике.
And Malevich, for example, using Russian motifs, was also, meanwhile, at the same time using the Japanese technique.
И также нам кажется, выглядит и наш фильм. Мы используем русские мотивы и русский исторический период, но выглядит он не очень русским.
And that's how we think maybe our movie looks like, because we use Russian history, the pieces of Russian history, and we mix it with other elements. That's why maybe doesn't look very Russian. We can.
I did want to go back to one question about kind of that specific moment in time and like the Aristod or the Zeppelin, which you referred to, and what that represented. But let's come back to that, because I think you're talking about something that I think is incredibly striking about the film, which is the production design of the film. It has such a very specific and very strong look, whether it's in like the bright kind of yellows with the red contrasts of the outside of the buildings, and then so many of the interiors are these darks, blues and greens. And just I think just an exquisite and gorgeous production design. I did notice the graffiti on the walls, as you were saying as well, but if you could talk a little bit about your approach to the production design. I think you've already talked about the graffiti, but just in terms of maybe the color palette and using the way that you use both the exteriors and the interiors of the buildings.
Ага. Да, вопрос по поводу особенно то, что касается цвета фильма и дизайна, связанного с производством фильма, то есть и так как интерьерные дизайны зданий, которые представлены, и дизайн, внешний дизайн зданий в том числе, то есть чем был мотивирован выбор подобного рода дизайна. Да, про палитру и про цвет фильма.
Это на самом деле классный вопрос, мой любимый.
It's your favorite question.
Потому что потому что это очень важная часть фильма. Вы же видели, мы использовали в граффити, например, красную конницу Малевича.
Нет, красную конницу Петрова.
Красную конницу.
For example, you could see that in graffiti we used this red horseman from Petrov Vodkin's famous picture.
И этот красный цвет дал нам некий заряд дальше как такой цветовой код.
And this the red color gave us like some impact, like the color code of the movie.
Yeah.
Да, и тут можно, здесь есть такая рифма, красная конница, красная армия и красный человек.
There's like a color rhyme here, like red horseman, red army, and red man.
Красная конница Малевича.
Красная конница Малевича?
Да. Значит, и как только появился этот color код, вокруг него стал возникать мир.
And after we got this color code, this red code, we started to build a world of the movie around it.
Мы поняли, что такие алармические цвета, которые есть у наших протагонистов вокруг, весь остальной мир, он серый, очень такой коричневый, ржавый, охристый.
So maybe Andrei, you can try to translate it.
Yeah, so the contrast between alarming, disturbing red and the world around, which is mostly gray, rusty, and green, as far as I understand.
И на этом столкновении, на этом визуальном конфликте он нам очень помогал, и нам кажется, что очень многие вещи работали. Мы специально искали в Петербурге такие дворы, потому что сам Петербург, он очень парадный, красивый, люминесцентный, и все эти локации, конечно, мы специально подбирали.
Yeah, and this contrast was very important. This clash between this two colors. At the same time, St. Petersburg was an important location for the movie, and specifically, we were looking for like wells and inner yards of the city, because in general, St. Petersburg is very imperial. It's very bright, and so they were looking for specifically dark and old corners of the city that create certain atmosphere.
And I just wanted to say one thing. The Red Horseman that inspired the Red Code were the Red Horseman by Malevich, not by Petrov Vodkin. Natasha was right; it was Malevich.
Yeah, I mean, and I think like some of those interiors, whether it's the old factories or kind of the the interiors in decay, like the design or the attention to detail is so exquisite. So I really appreciate kind of your location selection and the effort that went into that. I don't know, Andrei, if you want to translate that, and then I'll move on to the next question.
Мими просто говорит, что она очень оценила выбор, вообще, в принципе, проработку деталей и цвета в картине. Она была очень впечатлена и просто хотела дополнительно подчеркнуть это.
Дело в том, что с нами работали потрясающие, на самом деле, художественный департамент. У нас был художник-постановщик Сергей Февралев и легендарная художник по костюмам Надя Васильева.
Yes, we had a very strong art department. The legendary art director Sergei Frolov, set director, and legendary costume designer Nadezhda Vasilyeva.
И они воплотили наши смелые мечты, и, конечно, невероятно классно работать с такими талантливыми.
And they took our dreams and made it come true, and it's great to work with such talented people.
Yeah, the work is beautiful. One of the things that struck me at the film is you're, of course, addressing really big questions about these questions of redemption or forgiveness or kind of right and wrong. And at some point, can you atone for past sins? But the structure of the film is like a kind of maybe a more traditional kind of cat and mouse chase. And I love how you use a lot of the tropes that we've often seen in kind of a cat and mouse film, or that kind of chase in your film. So I was wondering, when you thought about setting up this structure as the cat and mouse, like if there were other kind of films that use those same tropes or thematically that you were referencing along those lines. Like one in specific instance is when he's outside of the apartment building and he makes the telephone call from the phone booth, and the cue the major knows that he's outside as the train passing by, but then when the tram is gone, we see the empty phone booth. And it actually reminded me of other scenes and, one Chicago set film, actually, like The Fugitive. But I was wondering if there were kind of inspirations in terms of thinking about the genre of the film in that way.
Ну, ты просто спрашиваете о том, там очень много как бы узнаваемых каких-то вещей, и какими фильмами мы вдохновлялись жанровыми. So we decided to use different genre instruments to tell this parable. So the genre instruments helped us to hold the tension inside the movie, so the people wouldn't get bored hearing our parable, so they will get the sense, the ideas, and won't fall asleep. Why we were telling it. And so that's why we used a lot of elements of noir movies, chase movies. Before we were preparing the shooting, we refreshed our memory watching some chase movies, for example, The Fugitive, and also Enemy of the State by Tony Scott, and a lot of other chase movies. Just watching them, thinking maybe we can see some hints for how to shoot this or how to shoot that scene, or maybe get some inspiration. Of course, not to repeat exactly what the others did, but there are a lot of references, actually. When we were at the Russian Cinema Festival in Sochi, they asked us for references, and we actually prepared a big list. A lot of writers, a lot of directors we watched in our life, and we read this list at the press conference, and it took like 2 minutes to read all the names of the painters, the writers, the directors, the poets, the composers that influenced, actually, that made influence on us when we were thinking about how to make this movie. Actually, each movie is the sum of what you've been watching and what you've been reading for years, plus something else.
Yeah.
that makes it. But maybe when we are talking about the starting point for us, the inspirational starting point was Breathless by Jean-Luc Godard.
Yeah, I mean, I think, one is there is definitely no doubt that you maintain the tension throughout the film, because I think for me, it was one of the films this year where the tension is like it's so held so strongly throughout the film. So you succeed very well, but and the way that these kind of tropes are integrated, I think, is beautiful, because it feels like a wholly unique or singular film, but you can see these references inside of it. So I enjoyed that.
Thank you.
Yeah. I think one of the, going back to this kind of question of redemption or forgiveness, but I think it starts off with this kind of question of trust. And, the characters are all existing within a system that is state run, in which everybody, I think, is maybe required or demanded that they trust the state on some level, or perhaps they don't trust the state at all. And what that creates is like a distrust amongst the population, amongst the citizens, amongst friends, amongst coworkers. So I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about your approach to thinking about both kind of a maybe more totalitarian system and these questions of trust, or the erosion of trust within it.
Андрей?
Фильм, естественно, прежде всего помимо прощения, избавления от грехов, искупления, он также поднимает тему доверия, и особенно это касается доверие людей друг к другу в ситуации, когда существует государственная машина, государственная система, которая, ну, в общем, заставляет людей задумываться о своей преданности и отношении людей друг к другу и доверие между ними. И, собственно говоря, насколько важна тема, связанная непосредственно с доверием в тоталитарном государстве, доверием между людьми, между гражданами.
Ох, вот вы копнули, да. Это вообще, ну, вот, да, если погружаться сейчас в эту тему, это нам надо, я думаю, где-то сутки мы бы созвонили про это. 24 часа нам нужно.
It's gonna take a while if we're gonna discuss this topic.
Это очень, очень объемный и очень сложный вопрос.
It's a very difficult, complicated question.
Действительно, то, о чем вы говорите, доверие, вообще раскаяние, чувство вины и чувство прощения, это масштабные вещи, да, в любом сообществе.
Topics of redemption, of trust, they are major topics for every society.
Конечно, просто одним нарративом мы бы не справились в фильме. Нам бы никаких не хватило бы 2 часов, чтобы говорить на это.
Just with a single narrative, that would be not possible to cover this topic. We would not have enough time. Just 2 hours is not enough.
Поэтому мы старались максимально в каждый кадр принести тот мир, чтобы и через него, и через не-нарратив, через невербалику об этом рассказывать.
Yeah, so we tried for every frame to talk about this world, to make it explicit that every frame of this movie is talking about all these problems, not only through the narration, not only through verbal component, but also for non-verbal, for visual component of the film.
Поэтому я так обрадовалась вашим вопросам про дизайн, про color code. Это именно тот слоеный пирог, который мы и создавали, чтобы как можно больше вербальной и невербальной информации было в кадре.
That's why I was so happy to hear all the questions about color code, about color grading, and all the visual components of the movie, because that's exactly what we're aiming at. This is the multi-layered dish, multi-layered cake that we were making to present for the viewers.
Что, да, когда мы начинали работать и нашим продюсером Валерию Федоровичу первую версию сценария.
Yeah, so we started work when the producer saw the first version of the screenplay.
То они прочитали это как историческое.
They read it as a historical movie.
И поэтому мы начали там говорить про соответствие эпохи деталей, может быть, каких-то анахронизмов.
Yeah, so start talking about all the details and something that is not something that seems asynchronous, something that does not work with the particular day and age of the movie presents.
Да, а потом мы подумали, что историческое кино очень связывает нас по рукам и ногам и не дает нам рассказать метафизическую, человеческую историю.
So we realized that all this historical movie as a genre is like produces certain limitations for us to talk about this metaphysical story that we were trying to tell, and so there are certain limits that we have to deal with.
Да, и когда мы предложили продюсерам концепцию вот этой ретро-утопии, которая развяжет нам руки и ноги, они подумали какое-то время и сказали: слушайте, а это может быть новым поворотом в этой теме или новым взглядом на эту тему.
So when we offered to the producers this the concept of this retro utopia that we wanted to make eventually, that's going to untie our hands. They replied that actually it's going to be a new turn, a new twist in this, in addition to this topic that we're trying to talk about here.
Concerning the ideas behind the plot and behind the movie, So we were not so long ago. We were talking with Natasha. We were talking about what actually is usually the inspiration for our scripts and for our movies. And we came to the conclusion that it's always our personal fears are the sources of the inspiration. And in this particular case, with Captain Volkonogov Escaped, these were two particular fears, sources of the inspiration. First fear, the fear of becoming a victim of a torturer, and the second fear was the fear of becoming a torturer by yourself, because sometimes the border is too thin. Sometimes you just don't notice when you cross it, and that's a big danger.
You know, I think one of the other things, though, and I was wondering if this might be one of the inspirations, is this question of, I mean, this possibility for redemption, right? Is that, he's torturing himself because he's worried about his own redemption. But in a larger sense, whether it's self-imposed or imposed from outside, or in the end, it becomes maybe, like you said, maybe a more metaphysical or even a religious question, is this question. I know probably heaven and hell in this world are maybe more symbolic, but it does end up turning from this question of redemption in a religious or a spiritual sense. So I was, so I guess I wanted to return now to this question of there is like you said, there's, to me, it was a very strong sense that even though there was this strong historical setting, that you didn't, it wasn't completely set in the past. But I think that there are kind of, like, for example, you reference this moment when there's the aerostat or the Zeppelin, and that has probably a very specific meaning in that moment, maybe like a hope for a future. But I'm wondering the ways in which you interpret that symbol and what that might be right now in the present. I don't know.
Андрей.
Да, ну вопрос связан с тем, что непосредственно, несмотря на то, что так, если говорить проще, то про символ аэростата или символ дирижабля, который появляется в фильме, и несмотря на то, что мы можем его привязать, может быть, к какой-то конкретной эпохе, тем не менее он обретает все равно метафизическое значение в фильме. И что этот символ означает, по-вашему, для нас, для людей, живущих сегодня?
Or maybe not hope, but maybe the one thing that everybody becomes obsessed with or focuses on because it's the distraction. So yeah, I was really interested in that as a symbol.
То есть является ли это символом надежды или разрушения? То есть вопрос был связан с символизмом дирижабля.
Ну да, такая большая штуковина в кадре обычно тянет на символ.
Such a huge thing in the frame usually is a symbol. There is no way out of it.
You see, you see, we how we came to this symbol. Actually, we read a real story how a Zeppelin that was flying over Leningrad in the late 30s had a crash and fell on the ground, and a big fire happened on the place where it did fell, on the place of the crash, and he fell right on the that was, как вот будет питомник, собачий питомник.
Like a dog breeding facility or dog shelter.
It was a dog shelter for the special dogs that worked for на правоохранительные органы они работали.
Yeah, who worked for law enforcement.
Yes, for the law enforcement dogs, asylum, and the Zeppelin fell on it, and there was a big fire, and the dogs went on fire, and the dogs that were on fire were running along the streets around that place. So we read about this, and this was like, so we're showing the period where the guys who were previously arresting and torturing people were arrested and tortured by themselves.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like it was in actual history, it was in 1938 because the big terror started in 1937,
Okay.
and then in 1938 it was the turn of the guys who arrested people a year before. Like they came for them, and so that's actually how the Zeppelin came as a symbol of the time. But we think that maybe it's not only a symbol, maybe it's more about the atmosphere of the time.
Mm-hmm.
This big thing in the sky, this
Yeah.
big red thing in the sky.
Great. Well, thank you. And the last question I really have was about the casting, because of course Yuri Borisov is amazing in the film, and we've, saw him in other films this year, and he really shines. So I was wondering if you could just talk about the casting process and deciding on him and how you worked with him in the role, because of course, as the central character, he has to carry most of the film as the lead actor.
Как вы выбирали актеров, как проходил кастинг, почему выбрали именно этого актера на главную роль?
Ну, с Юрой Борисовым все было как-то понятно с самого начала. У нас был замысел, даже первый драфт сценария, и мы увидели Юру, поняли, что это он. У нас, в общем-то, не было кастинга на него, мы сразу поняли, что это он. А дальше где-то у нас было 5 драфтов сценария, а с Юрой мы уже вышли на площадку, когда у нас был 27-й драфт, и все они появились, в том числе благодаря Юре, потому что мы с ним много работали и уточняли многие сцены.
So we came upon Yuri Borisov, the actor who plays our protagonist. We came with the first draft of the script, and when we met him and talked to him, we understood right at that point that it should be him. And then after that, he already influenced all the other drafts of the script because we were discussing it with him, and when it came to shooting, in the end, it was like 27 draft of the script. It was actually mostly after working with Yuri.
Mm-hmm.
Ну, да, и Юра очень подробный актер, он до этого колена хочет знать, откуда взялся его персонаж, и все эти колена каждый раз.
Андрей, можете привести?
So Yuri was very curious. He was very meticulous about everything that his character stands for, and so he wanted to know everything about his character to make sure that it's going to be true performance.
Mm-hmm.
So he wanted to know everything about the parents of his protagonist, the grandparents, the great-grandparents, and all that stuff. This is Yuri's method.
He wants a fully fleshed backstory for the character. So what are the ways, can you talk a little bit about the ways in which maybe he influenced or helped you to the script, or helped you to kind of fill out the character? Was it his ideas about who the character was and his motivations, or was it also like thinking about like what his range or talents as an actor are?
Можете привести пример, как вот он где-то вот именно Юрий повлиял на сценарий, вот какие-то его соображения или какие-то его вопросы?
Да, у нас, например, была сцена, когда он омывает Old Woman на, в общем, крыше, да, и там был вопрос такой, типа, как вот, а что ему играть в этой сцене?
For example, there is a scene when he is washing the old woman,
Mm-hmm.
and there was a question, what should he play? in this scene? What
Да,
is he telling? What's the story he's telling?
вернее, скорее, это я ему задала этот вопрос. Юра, что ты тут собираешься играть?
Natasha asked Yuri a question. Yura, what do you intend to play here?
Right.
Юра сказал, так все ж понятно, он отмывает свою вот эту вот израненную, скукоженную душу.
And Yuri said, I understand totally what's happening here. He is washing his wounded soul here.
Mhm.
His own, the soul of his own.
Окей, хорошо, это играем.
And Natasha said, okay, no, go play it. So that's how it works with you.
Я
Yeah.
хотела сказать, например, про актера Александра Яценко, который играет роль
Майор Гвоздева.
майора Гвоздева.
Natasha wanted to say some words about actor Alexander Yatsenko, who plays the tutor of Volkonogov, the guy who
Okay.
teaches him everything.
Да, у нас в стране Александр, по большей части, у него амплуа такое. Он персонаж такой добрый, душевный и даже комедийный.
So Alexander Yatsenko is a very famous actor in our country, and he always plays the good guys.
Uh-huh.
Good guys, funny guys.
И для него это был определенный вызов, стейтмент, прямо сыграть что-то такое совершенно противоположное.
Yeah, and it was a real challenge for him to play something real opposite, a real villain.
Yeah.
И вот мне кажется, что такое сочетание глаз, таких добрых глаз и такого какого-то отеческого лица с его ролью дало нам какой-то 3D актерскую игру.
So the combination of his kind eyes and like a father's face with what he does gave us something that Natasha calls 3D actors playing.
Mhm. Thank you. Yeah, and then I just had one more question. Since you guys work together as a team, and just if you could talk a little bit about your own process of writing together and directing together, and how that works.
Well, there is we're dividing the zones of responsibility. So I'm mostly my zone of responsibility is the script mostly. I'm the main writer. So I'm working on the body of the script. So we are working together on it, but I'm creating this body, the text. And Natasha is the boss at the shooting. She's the main director, and I'm during the shooting. She is commanding because there can be only one commander at the shooting place, because otherwise there will be chaos.
Yeah.
So Natasha is commanding, and I'm like sitting near her, like something like a counselor, something like a consigliere. And so that's why in our couple, the woman comes first. So we're Natasha Merkulova and Alexei Chupov, because the woman is the main director.
Okay. Yeah,
that's why the woman comes first.
As it should be.
Так и должно быть.
Леша борется с журналистами по всему миру за название нашего бренда, потому что мы приводим в пример, например, бренд Dolce & Gabbana, мы говорим, ну, их же не называют Gabbana.
So it's Natasha says during all these years that we work together, we have to fight for this brand. I mean, so they would name us like Natasha first and me second, because in many countries, even in countries where feminism already won, sometimes the journalists put me on the first place and Natasha on the second, not paying attention to that. So Natasha, as an example, Natasha draws Dolce and Gabbana. So nobody thinks about naming them Gabbana and Dolce.
Right.
And here people just can't get used to the women coming first in the couple. And not only in Russia. In Russia, all journalists already know. All journalists that write about cinema already know about this. But in Europe, in America, sometimes they put the man on the first place, and that is really surprising. So that we still sometimes have to correct the journalists about
Мы
that.
сначала хотели из-за этого развестись, но потом передумали. Это шутка. Блин, никто не смеется над моими шутками.
Natasha said that first we wanted to divorce because of this, but then we skipped this idea. Then she commented that that was a joke. I was afraid, actually.
Добавь, что это шутка.
I didn't understand the joke for first. Okay.
Well, thank you so much both for being here. I'll let you return to set, but I just wanted to say thank you for joining us. Thank you for sharing the film with our audiences. I'm really interested for them to see it and to hear their reactions on the film. And I wish you the best of luck with what's next.
Thank you. Спасибо вам большое за такие классные, умные вопросы. Честно говоря, надо как-то, я не знаю, это повторить и нормально уже поговорить.
Thank you very much for such great and clever questions. Natasha would actually not mind to meet again to talk about it longer.
I would love to talk more about the film, especially the design. I just like was so struck by it. But I mean, just also the way the whole narrative is put together and the acting. I mean, I think all the elements come together so beautifully to make an incredibly powerful film. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Andre.
Yeah, thank you very much. And also, on the personal note, I wanted to thank you so much for making such a great movie, because as a person who teaches Russian language and Russian culture in the United States, I'm very happy that this topic was covered. And there's a great movie to replace Burned by the Sun by Nikita Mikhalkov that we can screen for the students and discuss this question of Stalinist time.
Thank you very much.
Супер, спасибо.
Thank you very much. And we're sorry for the location where we're shooting, and right now we should go on shooting. So
we
excuse
look
us for this lighting.
We look forward to seeing this film you're shooting now when it's finished. So let's be in touch. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Goodbye. Thank you.